Welcome to the Louisa Project 2027, where we discuss education, entrepreneurship, and innovation. Today, we're gonna do our one of our features called My Educational Journey, and it features today we're featuring the amazing Anoa Changa. She's a mom, an attorney, political activist, writer, and host of her own show, The Way, with Anoa on the Benjamin Dixon channel. It's a great show, very informative. Everybody on the Benjamin Dixon channel, except me, obviously, is really, really smart, and they have it's really, really great group of people. So, without further ado, I like to, I just went over your thing, went over your stuff. Let's hear from Miss Anoa. Anoa, talk to us.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is awesome. I don't know how awesome I am, but it is very great to be here. Thank you very much for having me. As you mentioned, I am a mom and attorney. As I say, I'm a mom first, and I'm an attorney second, even though being an attorney has been my lifelong dream. But being a mom has come, I mean, I guess we'll talk a little bit about that, but being an attorney for so long, I thought that was everything to me. That was what I had wanted to do ever since I was 8. Is the earliest I can think about wanting to be an attorney. But being a mom and investing in my kids and their future, I tell them both all the time, they're my greatest greatness. So this is I'm definitely excited to be here and talk with you, and also to watch this project and endeavor continue, blossom, and grow. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm just glad to have somebody famous on my show.
Oh, stop it. This is the big time. This has been on CNN. Yeah. I've only been on CBC radio.
That's more than me.
Post Live.
Yeah, that's something. I'm gonna get Ben too. All that he's. I mean,
yes, definitely.
We're definitely gonna talk. He doesn't know it yet.
Well, I think we have a really good, when we're talking about the folks that have come together with the Progressive Army, we have a very good crop of people, all Absolutely. Different backgrounds, but there's a lot of education and talent amongst all of us.
So. Very much so. And it's just, I mean, it's so many different personalities and so many different, from different walks of life. Like, as you, I don't know if I told you, I did an interview with Jennifer Louise from the Progressive Army about a garden in every school, and she was just so passionate about that project, and I was like, man, I love to see people passionate about what they do.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's.
We were talking about food banks, and I think we had started having a conversation in Slack one day about food banks. We're talking about it again tonight on Niz and Richard's show, Project Sanity. But she had mentioned that. And I do think that it's great when people talk about, like you said, when you get to talk about your passion. So I'm excited to talk to you about education and all things related.
Because I mean, I'm not the most. I got my little BA, but I'm going for my MBA shortly. But
nice.
I think there is so much open. I don't know, so much potential in this country that gets left behind because we don't distribute education evenly, right? So, or fairly. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do with this project is find ways through innovation and entrepreneurship, ingenuity, find ways to help more people reach their goals in education, even if it's just a certificate with 5 classes. You've just jumped up in your potential to earn for you and your family, and perhaps pay for more education in the future. So that's a big part of what we do. But
that's an excellent point. No, you're right. And then I was thinking, like what you were saying, like, or we give kids the tools for education. We talk about education, particularly when we talk about K through 12 in terms of grades or standards, right? But we tell kids, get good grades, you'll go to college, blah blah blah. We don't even give them the tools, to be able to know all the extras, right? Because I actually, my daughter, it's a fan, my hobby. The kids joke with me, my sisters, everyone jokes with me. Like I'm the person everybody comes to ask questions about school stuff, scholarships, things like that, because I was the first. I'm a first generation college grad, so I'm the first one in my family. My mother had went to college, but she dropped out some years before she met my dad and had us.
Yeah.
So I'm actually the first one in my family to graduate from college.
Awesome.
And when I went through college, by the time I was applying to college, I wasn't living with either of my parents. I was on my own. And so I had to, find scholarships, apply to school, do all that stuff without help from parents. Like many of my peers, I got my undergrad at the Ohio State University. So once you get to college, always with the D, it's Buckeyes. But seriously though, there's so many of us, coming up do not have the same tools. Even when you talk about people who have educated parents, people's parents may be educated, but they may not necessarily
know the ins and outs. Absolutely.
Right. And truthfully, kids today, the rigor, the stuff that goes into getting into college, paying for college, it's a completely different animal in many ways. Like my youngest sister just finished, I'm sorry, but my youngest sister just finished up her first year at Georgia State University, right? She's Georgia State. She's very excited, bright young woman. A couple of different things. Like, it's just the system. My other sister went to Georgia State. She did not finish. She's working full time, but now she's going to go back to school because she's like, hey, the baby can't pass me. I got to get back in school so I can graduate before her.
That's good. That's healthy competition there. Absolutely.
But even with us, the things my sister was asking me about the FAFSA has changed so drastically in the last 16, 17 years since I was in college.
Absolutely.
Since I first started college, she's asking me questions. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. You're going to have to send me the website so I can look at it and look it up.
Research. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it just changes. And if you don't stay on top, and luckily I've stayed on top of certain things because I have younger siblings who've gone through school or we have younger family members. But to be an adult out there in the world and you haven't had to deal with this in 20, 30 years and all of a sudden your kids need all this help, that can be very daunting. And schools,
absolutely.
if you're in a quote unquote good school and you're in the quote unquote good classes, right? If you're in that chosen select few group of kids
AP and other
who get the attention.
Absolutely.
Right. If you get the attention from the teachers, then you and your family will know these, but everybody doesn't always get access to the information the same way. So I definitely agree with you about making sure we provide opportunities for people to have the access to education, but we also need the resources and tools as well. It's an access issue on so many different levels.
Yes.
And I got one studying for an AP exam right now, and I'm just sitting here like, I took an AP class. Her dad took an AP class. But we're both looking at each other like, one, AP classes were never offered to us as freshmen. I think it's unbelievable that as a ninth grader, my daughter is studying for a college level exam right now, and she's freaking out. But and on the one hand, I'm like, maybe this wasn't a smart thing for us to let her do this. But on the flip side, it's an experience, and she's learned a lot about herself. And I think when the opportunities present, we should let our children have as much exposure as possible. So we're blessed that she's in the position to have, this opportunity education-wise, but there's so many kids who will never get there.
Yeah, and that's one of the saddest parts is it's just, a lot of it is just like anything else is where you're born, that neighborhood you're in and the family you're born to will dictate that's like 80% of what your life is going to be. There's going to be people that break through and get beyond whatever their circumstances are. But, those opportunities are too few. And those people that have that wherewithal to make that happen, they are too few, So it's a combination of things. I firmly believe if someone's shown, the majority of people, if they're shown a good path, they have the opportunity to take advantage of that path, they'll take that path. Right. I firmly believe that. But for a lot of people, it's just not visible. Right. See a lot of kids, a lot of inner city kids. I was one. But, I was a private school kid. Right.
But still.
A lot of kids that I knew from the neighborhood didn't know the process of signing up of applying for college. They didn't know that Pell Grants or public aid available. They didn't know anything about that. Right. And it's so sad that all this potential that we're losing as a country because higher education is becoming further and further and further away. And it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm sorry. We need to get on with this interview. We're just yapping away.
Yes. But there's so much to discuss and that needs to be discussed. But let's move along.
Because this interview is about you. We want to learn about your because as we talked about before, this podcast is about challenges, right? Because challenges are where the opportunities are, right? If we were on the other side,
exactly,
which is innovation and entrepreneurship. If you can go watch, listen to somebody's story and especially common challenges like some of the ones we're going to talk about in a few, those common challenges, if you can help people through those challenges, you can build a life you can help them through their lives and build a life for yourself. There's nothing better than that. There's nothing better than that. So again, I'm there, go yapping again. All right, let's run through your bio right quick. Okay, I'm gonna read this out because it's just amazing. All right, so you got your bachelor's from
the Ohio State University.
Your JD, which is, what is that, Juris
Doctor from West Virginia University.
You gonna make me call you Dr. Changa?
No. Anoa is fine.
Okay, all right. From West Virginia University, I want to talk to you about that in a minute. And Masters of City and Regional Planning from Ohio State University. So you went back to the Ohio State University?
No, I got my grad degree first.
Okay.
We talked about challenges and opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Well, just quickly, like when I was coming out of undergrad, I had my daughter Nayla, because it's so funny, because when people would try to guess how old I am, they figure because I'm a lawyer and because I have Nayla's my oldest, she's 14, they figure I have to be somewhere in my mid 40s, right? Yeah. And I laugh because I turn 35 next month, and everybody's like, wait a minute, it's not adding up. Yeah. And Nayla will laugh, but she's like, my mom, thank you. She's like, my mom had me in college. And so I had Nayla in between my sophomore and junior years of college. I had her in the summertime, and I went back to class 6 weeks later. Thankfully, Ohio State had some pretty decent online offerings, and I was at a point where it wasn't just fluff classes. They actually filled requirements. Like things, it's like the stars lined up to help me do what I needed to do. Like the book, The Alchemist. The Alchemist, it's a paraphrasing, but it's like the universe will conspire to help you achieve your goals, basically, right? And I really feel like when we became pregnant with Nayla, her dad and I had only been dating. I mean, we were young. We were only dating 6 months.
I've been there.
Yeah, and so I was terrified, but I was able to still, I was on scholarship at Ohio State, and Ohio State actually had this program called the Access Program, which was created at some point in time to help single parent students, to help students with children get through school.
What's the name of that program again?
The Access Program.
Access. These in there. Access.
Yes, because it's Ohio State, so is everywhere.
Yes, okay. Yeah.
But that's the actual legal name of Ohio State too. It's the is not a purpose. It's a part of the official name. So, but this program, it provided me a support network. So I was able to meet with other women, other students, because they may over the years have had like male students with kids be in the program, but for the most part, it was women and their children. Ohio State had really good student family housing. We were just in a unique position because there are about 5 of us, I think, who are all around the same age, coming through, the school at the same time. And, we were all on scholarship. We all were academically doing well in school. And so we did not necessarily have the common struggles that many students, because I was almost a junior. I had already been doing well in school. I had a good job on campus. So I had support from the department I worked for on campus. I had support from this program and these professionals that were tasked with helping to support women like me going through school. And then I had the support of my peers. There were other young women that I got to know. 2 were in my major, who also either had children or had smaller children, who were going through all the same changes and challenges. It was hard, but it was I mean, the most rewarding experience I went through until I had my son, because we didn't learn our lesson. So 2 years, 2.5 years, Max and they are 2.5 years apart. So by the time I'm graduating, we find out I'm pregnant with Maximus, and I was going to go to law school. I was going to go to law school. That's what I was going to do. I had applied. I had been accepted. That's what I was doing. But then I was terrified because when I did the math, I would have been due in the sometime around like first semester finals. So I put off law school. And from a class I had taken, I had learned about city and regional planning, growing up in Chicago and Harlem and New York and stuff, Jersey City, all the places I lived. Jersey City, yes, Jersey City. All the places I've lived, you know what I'm saying? Like urban development, community economic development, it's something that's so crucial to our communities, something that we need. So I had taken some classes, and at the time, like when I first went to Ohio State, just back for a second, when I first went to Ohio State, I was a computer science engineering major. I graduated with a sociology degree. I was talked into majoring in computer science by my high school guidance counselor my senior year. I actually originally wanted to be either a poli-sci major or it was poli-sci. I can't remember. It was political science or something else is what I wanted to major in when I thought. And she talked me into engineering because, like I said, I've always wanted to go to law school. And it was said to me, what happens if you don't get into law school? What are you going to do with a political science degree? And I can't remember what the other degree, I can't remember what the other one was, but it was something else, and that's what was said to me, right? And she was like, you're really good in math and science. You test really well. You have really good ACT and SAT scores. You should be an engineer. So I quickly learned more about engineering. It's the 90s. I liked computers. We never had one at home. Look, I thought computers were cool. I didn't have anyone to talk to or really understand. So all of a sudden, I'm a computer science engineering major. I'm at Ohio State. I'm in the College of Engineering. I went through a engineering summer program. I worked at IBM as an incoming freshman. Through this program at Ohio State, because Ohio State's a research-rich institution. So I got to work for 6 weeks at IBM in Rochester, Minnesota, before I even set foot on campus. It was an awful experience, though. It was great. And in hindsight, IBM would have kept me on in a different capacity, even though I was no longer an engineering major, which I was young and didn't realize that. And I could have gone someplace else besides Minnesota. But
Minnesota, boy, that's a lot of cold. Oh, it's cold, Minnesota.
Yes, from that first year curriculum, I stayed in engineering for like a year and a half. That first year, it was just so grueling before you even got to your computer stuff. Before you even got to the major courses. Going through the prereq courses and stuff. And I'm still going through all of that stuff, and I'm still saying to myself, I want to be a lawyer. So what am I doing? I need good grades to get into law school. Like, what am I doing this for? Like, and everybody would always say to me, but what if you don't get into law school? Like, I hear that all the time. That's why on my Twitter profile, like one of the quote I always have on all my profiles is "Never tell me the odds" by Han Solo. I feel like I live a life that defies the odds. I mean, I can see that. I'm a Black woman from an inner city community, quote unquote broken home. I became pregnant at 19. I graduated with honors. I got 2 more degrees. My kids are awesome. People always assume, people assume so much about us because my kids are so well adjusted. And I'm just like, Nayla's just like, we just let them think whatever they want to think, mommy. Like, it's okay. We know.
we know better.
So it was very interesting. But at that time, I worked in the minority engineering office on campus under. She just recently retired, but Dean Minnie McGee in the minority engineering office on campus. And even though I had switched out of engineering, their motto is once you're MEP, you're always MEP. So I worked with them. Doing recruitment, doing office work and things like that. So I got to see a lot of the struggle with kids coming in. I got to help with recruiting for the summer engineering program that I came out of, doing study skills. There's just so much that when you look at, white students coming from these suburban schools or these, hoity-toity private schools or magnet programs, they were just prepared on a completely different level than the average Black, Latino, or Native American student. It was just completely different. the opportunities, the exposures, the extracurriculars, it was just a different world. So you know, and the teachers, professors teach to that level, to that world they come in at. Where the rest of us are playing catch up, and it's very, very difficult. Yeah. And so that's why something like this is so great, because I think the opportunity to share our stories, to share our experiences, helps inform and engage others. So that's why when the family jokes about me being the go-to person. So when my mother decided, I guess I was in grad school, and my mother decided she was going back to college to finally complete her degree. They were living here in Atlanta, so she went to she's another one. She went to Georgia State. Half the family went to Georgia State. She went to Georgia State, and that's where she got her bachelor's. She has a bachelor's in African American Studies with a minor, a focus in urban education, I think is what her degree was.
So you know I got to talk to mama, right? You know I got to talk to mom, right?
Well, yeah. I told you, yes, definitely need to talk to my mom on a couple of different levels of how she started out. She started out at Marymount College in upstate New York, which is so funny. We call Marymount, we call that upstate New York, but it's really just like the suburbs of the city. Yeah. But you know, she started out there, and then she ended up at NYU, and then she didn't finish at NYU for whatever her reasons were. And we were homeschooled for a period of time growing up. I started school when we moved to Jersey City.
All right.
So I must have been 9. I must have been 9.
Man, that's a rough.
Well, I started school, and the crazy. We must have been 9 when I moved to Jersey City, because I started the 4th grade in Jersey City. I remember this because I started school in the 4th grade. I was homeschooled until the 4th grade, and they actually, because my parents, they homeschooled me, but they didn't really keep very well. Their records weren't the best. They had records, but they weren't up to the New Jersey state standards, I guess, or whatever. Or they would give my parents a hard time. I really don't remember. My mom can talk more about that. It's a little later date. But I remember, though, that very first day I went to school, they put me in the 3rd grade. And then they tested me. And I tested high. And they were like, they're not going to skip me. They refused to skip me, so they put me in the 4th grade. So then my mom kept fighting with them to have me classified as gifted. And I was finally put in the gifted class of 4th grade. So I remember this very good. My very first day of school, my brother and I went to PS 17. But then the 4th, 5th, and 6th grades were in a completely different building. The annex was several blocks away. So then I started walking. I'd walk my brother part of the way. He was in 1st grade, and then I had to walk the rest of the way to the other building.
Yeah, that's when kids used to walk to school. I remember those days.
That's when kids used to walk. My kids walked to school when we lived in West Virginia, because we lived like right across the street from their school. But otherwise, you know, they never really had that experience. But when I think about education, think about sharing my story and talking with others, like, I talk to people about their passions, about what's possible, but then I also try to help and connect people. Like, if I don't know something, I'm definitely going to help you try and figure it out, or find someone who can give you an answer. It's wild that my daughter's in high school and I get to go and talk about career day and stuff. So like, I go and talk for career day, and like, you know, her school's in the middle of Buckhead, but it serves, you know, Buckhead, Bankhead, this large area. Out of all these parents for the 9th grade, I'm like one of the only people to go, right? Yeah. And we're like, I guess, you know, we middle class on paper. So it was wild for me that I'm like the only parent there for the 9th grade anyway. Yeah. And we're talking and stuff with the kids. Like, I'm talking to the kids, and they send me to a 10th grade class, because the 9th grade class, like, there's testing going on or whatever. So I go and talk to a 10th grade class, and the kids start asking questions about, you know, what if I don't have good SAT scores? Or, you know, are there scholarships only for the top people? And there's just like so much information out there that I've learned from going through school myself and having to figure out, how am I going to go to school and pay for it? How am I going to take care of 2 kids while I'm in school? You know, all these different challenges and opportunities that I've learned along the way, that I try to help trickle it down, as best I can.
Especially single parents doing it and doing it successfully, and as well as you did it. My hat is off to you. But my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, it's with anything, it's a trade-off, right? There are like I feel like I get asked questions. I remember when I was coming out of law school, and like with my grades, like my grades were decent. My grades weren't like stellar. They weren't top of the line. but like my grades were decent. And I would get asked questions about what does this say about you? And I'm like, well, it says that I have a good work, I'm learning how to manage a good, healthy work-life balance because I raise children. By my second year, I was helping to coach my daughter's soccer team. I did other stuff besides just be in school. Like I tried to be a mom as much as possible. Like my son would be notorious for getting up with me because the best advice I got about when I was in law school, the best advice for anyone who has kids or other responsibilities or non-traditional students, whatever the case may be, best advice I was given about school was to treat it like a job, right? You had your class day, you had the way your classes were scheduled, laid out. You get your work and your study, your writing, chunks in as much as you can during your day. Then I'd, go pick up the kids, we'd do dinner, we'd have our family time. And then I'd either try and study some, or sometimes I would go to bed with them and just get up extra early. And that worked a lot better for me in law school. I'd go to bed with when they went to bed, and I'd get up at like 3 to prepare for class before I had to get them up and stuff. And my friends, because people would ask me, they're like, how are you prepared for class today? I'm like, I've been up since 2:30. I do what I can do, and that's just all it is. I had to work smarter, not harder. And those lessons that I've learned, I try to teach the kids too, because I'm like, you guys are going to be great. Your dad and I are okay. You guys are going to be phenomenal.
Yeah. And that's when, like I told you before, I'm a private school kid. And now my brother and I, because there's only two of us, we had our older brother, Derek, our half brother, he died when we were young. But
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's the story for another day. Now, with the two of us, our parents put us, they struggled to put us through private school, and we both of us, we feel very responsible for giving our kids even better, and we do the best we can within, of course, within our means. I mean, it's neither one of us are dead broke, but we have our struggles just like anybody else. But we are still very very strong about giving our children even better chances than what we had. Like we recently moved to get to. I mean, we can't afford the local private schools here. There's only two of them, and we can't afford either one of them. So we had to move to get to a better. It was more.
And we've had that. We've had that too. Like where we live at now. Like how Atlanta is. Where we live at now, what I pay in rent for a townhouse, for a modest townhouse, I could own like a huge. If I was a little further out in DeKalb County or someplace else, I could own a huge. But the schools aren't. The opportunity my daughter and my son have going to the schools they go to now. It pale. Other schools in the general metro area pale in comparison. To still have a level of diversity, to still have a level of normalcy. If I had to be way out in the rich white suburbs, what I'm saying? Like we're in it's a good mixture, a good diversity where they're at, and there's great opportunity.
And diversity.
So no, I definitely understand that.
Yeah. Diversity to me is so important. Unfortunately, the area this is North Alabama. It's black and white. There's a couple of employees, and that's about it, right? But I mean,
I'm in West Virginia.
I'm going to talk to you about West Virginia because that place is just mystifying to me. But anyway,
West Virginia is fascinating.
I can imagine. Well, anyway, here in Northern Alabama, we have a little bit. We have diversity in the house. My wife's from Germany, so we have two languages just flying around the house all day. So and like when I grew up in Jersey City, we had our little neighborhood football team, our little tackle football team. We played. They called us the Rainbow Coalition. That's how diverse our team was. We had Puerto Rican kids, Filipino kids, black, white, Haitian. We had 2 Puerto Rican kids, a few white kids. It was crazy. And now that when I think about it now, it's like, wow, that was a hell of an experience. I mean, you got kids speaking Tagalog and kids speaking Spanish, and it was just an amazing way to grow up. Absolutely amazing. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I heard some static back there. Maybe these storms out here. I'm sorry. Well, let's now I forgot all about my questions.
That's the problem. You got to keep me on task, so I can just start going, and I got story after story.
It's like, hey, well, that's what happens when you have an interesting life. All right. All right. Well, we introduced ourselves to the audience. We started on your journey. So, what made you want to become a lawyer? What was it? Did you watch Perry Mason one day? I'm showing my age.
Claire Huxtable.
Okay.
Claire Huxtable. Claire
Huxtable.
She was everything. She was well dressed. She had a nice house.
Elegant.
She was elegant. She was well spoken. She was happy. She was poised. She was everything. Felicia Rashad's Claire Huxtable was everything as a kid. And as any Black kid in America, absolutely. I watched the Cosby Show faithfully every Thursday night. That was the show. And then later on, we got A Different World, and Freddie eventually went on to law school in A Different World. Mm-hmm. But, and I watched like LA Law and stuff like that too, but it was Claire Huxtable that stood out in my mind because she was happy. She was this proud Black woman, and she was a lawyer. And for whatever reason, I associated being a lawyer with being a happy, good person.
Yeah.
Awesome. I've learned a lot since then, but that was my as an 8-9-year-old. I'm gonna say I was 8 because I remember watching it when we were still living in the Bronx when I was 8. So that's like my earliest memory. Yeah,
that's great. My favorite TV lawyer is Denny Crane after Claire Huxtable, of course. I love Denny Crane. I love that show. Was that Boston?
Yes, that's another great example.
Yeah.
There's so many good examples just from we talk about 80s and 90s television, but then my godmother, the woman who became my godmother when I was in middle school, she's an attorney. She's a criminal defense attorney, civil rights lawyer. She actually worked after she was in law school. She worked for Mayor Harold Washington in Chicago. This is by the time we moved to Chicago. So she did a lot of amazing work. She did work around the John Burge police torture cases, like all types of stuff. She's a member of the National Conference.
Why is that guy walking, breathing free?
Well, he got his 3 because statute of limitations. God. It's awful. It's really awful. And had they treated it, go ahead.
When I read that article that he was the foundation for Guantanamo, I was like, what? It didn't even.
The things that happened in Chicago, and we see, basically repeating that now at the Home Square Black site and other stuff going on. The way he ran his little Area 2 special command in Chicago, it was atrocious. But growing up around someone doing that type of work, getting to see what she was doing, seeing what she's doing, and she's another New Yorker. She's another New Yorker. She's a petite. And I love her, professor. She's a law professor now, Judith Scully. So we would go, as kids, we'd ride the bus down, downtown Chicago near the Harold Washington Library. We would ride down to her office, and for extra money as a kid, I'd get to help her do filing or make photocopies and stuff with her. But
that had to be a great experience.
But to see her in action, because this is my first time, because for all these years, right, I've wanted to be this lawyer. By now, I'm probably about 12 or 13. So for all these years now, I've wanted to be a lawyer, and now I have close proximity to my girl in real life. She's nothing like Claire Huxtable. She is loving and caring and funny and awesome and wonderful, but she's a real life person with real life complexities. But getting to know her and being around her and having her not only become my mentor, but to become my godmother, become someone who was very intrinsic and important in my life. So I got to see more up close and personally about being an attorney and what that entailed. Life twists and turns, and what we think we're going to do, it's like that meme, but what our friends think we do, what we really do, what the other people think we do. So being a lawyer today is like that. But
facets, yes.
Right, but the journey to where I am now, that she was a big part of that or whatever, and she's also a big part of why I was able to. Because I ended up, when we talk about West Virginia, how I first ended up in West Virginia was in high school. My mom and I had issues.
Go ahead.
My mom and I had issues, and so I was a willful girl child, so I got sent to live with my godmother. At this point, Professor, Judy had taken a job. She gave up the private practice and she took a job teaching at West Virginia University College of Law, which I ultimately went to. But this is when I was in high school. I was 16, and I got sent to Morgantown, West Virginia, in the 90s from Chicago. When the boy down the block asked me that I want to go cow tipping, and he wasn't joking, like it was Morgantown's very different now than it was then, 20-something years ago.
I had one of those invitations. I was at West Georgia College. I can't because my family's here. My father's side of the family's here from Atlanta. My mother's from Alabama, from Central Alabama.
Oh, okay.
And so I came down and my brother was already at Emory University at that point. So I was like, okay, I'm going to come down to Georgia. Thought I was going to play a little football, dummy, and come on down to Georgia. And I was one of the guys on the team. His name was Ross. He was a equipment manager. He was one of the guys that played. He got hurt, and he stayed on as equipment manager.
Right. Okay.
And Ross said, he said, why? So what you doing this weekend? I don't know. Doing what I always do. Nothing. And he said, why don't you come on down? Well, he said, come on, play some yard ball and do some cow tipping. I said, hey, now this is a big old white boy country boy. He's like, I was like, I don't know about that, Ross. I'm not going. I'm not playing no ball without you.
They would shoot paintball guns at the cows. Apparently, I'm like, I am not. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, you should go and see what it's like and report back to me. It was a very interesting experience, but being there at the law school, being around the law students, being around her at such a formative period in my life, I knew that is what I was going to do at some point in time. Did not know exactly whether I'd be a criminal defense attorney like her or not, but I knew I wanted to do something that would better the lives of people around me.
Yeah.
And so I knew that. So when everybody would always say to me, well, what if you don't become a lawyer? I mean, like, eventually, finally, at some point in time, being a little sci-fi nerd, get that from my dad, the Han Solo quote, never tell me the odds, finally stuck eventually, because you get to a point where either you can listen to all the haters and the naysayers, or you can keep pushing and finding your way.
Yep, I know that feeling.
I mean, I originally set out, like, sometimes I think, like, had I did things differently, I would have been a lawyer for this longer period, probably doing something more in line with what I originally thought I would be doing. Delaying law school, delaying becoming a lawyer, and arose with a new set of challenges and stuff. But that's how our real greatness, unfolds, is when how we deal with the ambiguity, how we deal with the meantime, and pivot. And there's so much learning and opportunity in those moments.
Yes. I like to.
But that's go ahead. But that's how I got on.
Yeah.
The law path.
Okay, because I mean, I'm a firm believer that life is the best form of education, right? Now, that's not going to get you a better job. It's not going to get you, a degree. But I've traveled a lot. I've seen a lot of. I've lived a lot of places. I think the last count was I lived and worked in 9 different countries, and it's and it's really important to me that your journey doesn't start and end where you started. Right, your journey should take you different places in different directions, if you're able. Right, not everybody's able to do so. Right, but I'm a firm believer that you should not. The town that you're born and raised in should not be where you ultimately have your life experiences, if it's at all possible. Because meeting different people, different types of people, living in different places is even the difference between Chicago and West Virginia. That had to be culture shock on an amazing scale.
It was a very difficult year. It was a very difficult year. It was just so difficult as a teenager making that leap. I actually ended up going back to Chicago. I ended up going back to Chicago. By that time, my dad had split up when I was little. So my stepdad, I think, had already moved. My stepdad and my mom were splitting up by then. My mom and my siblings had moved back to Brooklyn, I think. And then I actually ended up in Chicago with my best friend and her mother, because I just couldn't cut it in West Virginia. And to go to New York with my parents because New York has that whole Regency system and stuff with Regents exams. Because I had it, and they required a different number. Basically, I would have been behind a semester or something like that when we sat down and talked about my family. And there was no way that I was going to repeat or do things. There was no way I was graduating late, from high school because of family issues. So I ended up staying with my best friend and her mother my senior year of high school. And I mean, it was just a very precarious situation. I'm very thankful that I was allowed to stay with them, but it was just still, to be in your senior year, trying to figure out college, no real family support, it was the oddest time. When I like other kids had their parents moving them into the dorms. I went to college on a Greyhound bus and shipped my stuff to myself. And luckily, one of my roommates who I had not met yet had a car, and they came and picked me up from the bus station in Columbus. It was a very wild experience. And so my kids sometimes tease me because they're like, oh my God, you're just like living through us because you didn't have, because their favorite thing is like, well, you guys were poor. I'm like, excuse me? and they said, my brothers actually got very upset because we were talking one day, my brothers overheard that they were at the house, and my brothers husband, they were like, wait, but what? And the younger of my two brothers came in with the quickness because we're the first four of us are all 3 years apart. So the younger of my two brothers, he always says to people like, my sister raised me, she did my hair, she took care of me, she changed my diapers, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So he's so much younger. So like my younger siblings almost feel like they're my first set of kids in a way.
I can imagine.
Because the youngest is 17 years younger than I am, right? So like, they're funny like that. So they would almost have this sibling rivalry with the kids, and the kids would say things like, well, you guys were poor, that's why you only had one TV. Because like my kids in Maxville, we only have one TV in the house, and everybody's like, you guys don't have TVs in your room? I was like, for what? We didn't have TVs in our room. They were like, you guys didn't even have cable because you were poor. But they're kids, and it's funny. I mean, and then they'll laugh, and they're like,
they have no filter.
No, and they're like, we don't mean it. We're just joking, ha ha ha. But I just think that so much that we go through, it definitely informs the way, because we want them to have better than us. So thinking about, making sure my kids have a supportive environment where they can express themselves, but also giving them the boundaries to check themselves is crucial. But education, like I've been talking to them, like my personal belief is that we need to be talking to kids about education from the time they're little. And but how we need to explain it is that, because kids, you take a class or whatever and you see it in the abstract. I'm never going to use this in the real world or this, that, and the other. But there are benefits to the way we learn or why we learn certain things. There's a reason why it happens. If we don't explain to kids why it matters, how can we expect them to be invested in it? So my daughter will tell people, my mom's been talking to me about college since I was like 5. I said, really, since you were smaller than that, considering the fact that my daughter was a baby in a slingy at meetings with me on campus, like, she's been on college campus. Like she would joke with me. She goes, yeah, I got my law degree in 2009. Like Nayla would go to college. Nayla would go to law school classes. Not just she would come to class with me. Nayla would come to class with me. I'd set up my laptop. She put on her earphones. Dora was very big for us. Dora and Blue's Clues were big for us. Dora rocks. So she put on her headphones and she would sit there and do Dora stuff on the computer and games. And she'd tap me. I remember the very first day of property law, Nayla answered a question in class. It was a very simple question, but Nayla still, her hand shot up and she proudly answered. And I said, okay, don't do that again though, because we get points. She said, well, I'll just give you all my points. I'll just tell, Auntie Joy. But so they've been around, and so they know. My son though, boys are a little different. So my son's a little like, I want to be a doctor. I'm going to med school. I'm like, dude, you're not going to med school with C's. He's like, it's 6th grade. I'll take it seriously once I'm in high school. I'm like, if you don't start taking it seriously now,
that's absolutely
you're not going to suddenly take it seriously. And my daughter, she's so focused on, she wants to go to MIT. She wants to be an engineer. She really wants to be supreme ruler of the world, I believe, is what her goal is.
She might just put in a good word for me.
Or to own a city. That's what I keep saying. I say, you know what? I am all about Max and Nayla because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be working for one of them in about 15 years.
Nothing wrong with that. As long as it's a good salary. Give me a good package, we can work.
Yeah, but talking to them about why it builds on, why each year builds on to the next year and provides support. So when we sit down and map out her classes for college, for high school, and looking at what's going to put her in the best position to be competitive, because I feel like talking to her in ninth grade, I talk to my son now that he's in sixth. I mean, so we have the conversation more seriously once they start middle school. Not to stress them out or freak them out, but if you're saying you want to do these great things, look, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, our family don't got money to be paying for you to go to college. I'm sorry, it's just what it is. I'm still paying off my very large student loan debt myself. I will still be paying my student loan debt when you guys are in college, and probably having a Parent Plus loan on top of it. So, you know, looking at how do we maximize our opportunities, our skill sets now so that we can help pay for what we need to pay for later on. Because I keep telling them, like, you guys have to do something to make sure this gets paid for, which is why I make him play lacrosse. But that's a scholarship sport. You are playing lacrosse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah, absolutely.
you are playing lacrosse. My daughter, I keep telling her, I was like, you and your dad need to build like an engine or something. Because, but looking at, but if I think like talking to the kids, like she has a friend, she's a friend who's a senior, who got into a prestigious art school, and they only have half the money to pay for the tuition, right? From financial aid. And now it's May, and we're scrambling to help this kid try and find scholarships. But if someone had talked to this kid a year ago, they would have been in such a much better position in terms of just difference a few months would have made in helping this kid find money. You know, and I feel bad for kids like that because it's really, really difficult when it's this late in the game to try and help people through something. I mean, maybe you could try to defer and pull together the money, but it just still, that type of stuff, I think when we don't help kids prepare ahead of time, we set them up to some ways fail, because even though I succeed in getting across this initial hurdle, there's other hurdle that no one really explained to me before.
You need to have, at least have a basic idea of the lay of the land. One of my many mentors, he has a saying, you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes it's just just find somebody who knows about it and talk to them. All right, let's what I got a question for you. What made you decide on the Ohio State University?
They gave me the most money.
Yeah, that's hey.
I mean,
keep it simple.
As a senior in high school, I applied to the Ohio State. I applied to Emory.
I know that one.
I applied to Emory. I applied to Spelman. I applied to, because by the time I was going into college, my parents had actually moved to Atlanta. So I was like, okay, well, I can look to be closer to. I didn't know about Georgia State, I guess. And you know, I limited the number of schools I applied to because I didn't have that many waivers for my application fees. But then I applied to University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign because I graduated from high school in Chicago. So I applied to U of I Urbana-Champaign because there's the top engineering program. You know, Spelman had the program with Georgia Tech. You know, everything I was looking at. And then, like, Emory didn't have engineering, but then Emory had, you know, I still was talking about I want to go to law school, poli-sci, that type of stuff, right? But anyway, but U of I, I got in. But U of I, because my parents no longer lived in the state of Illinois, I was considered an out-of-state student, even though I graduated from a Chicago high school. So being treated as an out-of-state student at U of I, my tuition as an out-of-state student at Ohio State was cheaper. And Ohio State had actually given me a scholarship for out-of-state students on top of these others, the other aid I got.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I had all this money from Ohio State. It was a no-brainer. I had seen the view book. I had not visited Ohio State until I went there that summer for my summer program. So I went to Ohio State sight unseen. I accepted Ohio State sight unseen. I mean, they were going to give me money. I was going to make it work because I was going to be a lawyer. So I was going to make it work.
One way or the other.
I was going to make one way or the other. I was going to make it work. It was happening.
I know you now. So, I believe it.
Well, you know what I'm saying? Like, I slept on a couch. I slept on a couch and an air mattress my senior year of high school, and I'm like, okay, I already did this because I want to be with my friends. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to be where I thought I was loved, and you know, high school friends are so fickle. I learned that lesson the hard way. But yes, I'm just like, but Ohio State ended up being a very, again, the universe has conspired, you know, to help me be successful, because Ohio State ended up being the right place for me to be at. with the right opportunities.
My number one mentor, my mother, she said she has a saying, "You're always where you're supposed to be." I was like,
yes,
oh,
definitely.
okay, all right,
Definitely.
all right.
We may not always feel that at that moment,
Yeah,
but ultimately that is always true.
yeah, absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about your Masters of City and Regional Planning from Ohio State University. Now that I know you had that degree, we're gonna do some more talking about that in particular as it pertains to colleges, community colleges, and so forth. But tell me more about that degree.
Going to the CRP, like it's interesting the way it's set up, and it's not the same everywhere. Some places it's more aligned with public policy. At Ohio State, it's actually in the School of Architecture. And I became aware of. I didn't know city or regional planning. I had never really heard about planning until later on in undergrad, and that was a backup thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, my goal is because I have a kid. You start getting jittery, like, okay, law school, is this really going to pan out? Can I really do this? The doubt sets in. But I'm like, okay, I do have other interests. I learned about it from another dean within the College of Engineering, another woman. She knew me from working in the minority engineering office, Dean Mary Uhas, and these are people who took a liking to me, and these are people who still will check up on me now, all these years later. Probably partly because Gail was such a cute kid and stole everybody's hearts. But seriously, but she suggested, because I guess we had a conversation maybe one day when I was working in the office, and she suggested I consider the program, because I was like, I'm not really sure about law school anymore, So I applied, I got in, and I got funding. I'm pretty good. I mean, like when I talk about, everyone's like, if you have funding, why do I have student loans? Because I wanted to be able to be a mom. I subsidized my ability to be a mother and go to school versus having to be a mom, work full time, and then try. I didn't want to sacrifice school, and I didn't want to sacrifice. But that's another conversation that I wish somebody would have had with me about student loan debt.
Yeah, it doesn't go anywhere.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's another conversation I wish somebody. Not that it wasn't worthy, but I always said I'm investing in my education. I'm investing in myself. What is more worthy than this? And while that's true, I could have done it in a smarter way than what I did.
I just did a segment. Well, I'm still editing it. I just did a segment on student loan for low-income students. I did not know. I'm going to share this with you because it shocked me. Uncle Sam has a program to help. The Department of Education has a program called income-driven repayment programs, right? So
yes, I just changed the one.
Yeah, see, and I didn't know, but did you know that over 51% of college students that are going through debt in the United States, 51% are eligible. Guess what the percentage is of people who are actually
enrolled? It's probably a very small percentage because it's not very well advertised.
15%.
Really, I did not realize it was that low. Like I knew about IBR again because I can't.
No, you know it.
I can't afford a $700-800 student loan payment, which actually is what my student loan.
Yeah.
On top, that's what my student loan. My student loans and my car note is almost the same amount as my rent. Like it's like paying for two. It's like paying a mortgage and a rent at the same time.
Yeah.
But like the IBR, I mean. Again, because I went to school for 10 years. I have two kids. I went to school for 10 years. I had to pay for the bar exam and studying for the bar. Like I took out loan money because they were giving it to me. This is pre 2008 bus, right?
Yeah.
So like high interest loans, whatever. I'm gonna pay it back. It'll be okay. You're not sitting there doing the math and crunching the numbers when you're going through it.
Yeah, and that's something. About that. Yeah.
That's the conversation I had. My sister's in college, and she foolishly got a high interest loan for her first year, and no one had I had it. She was like, "Well, I had to make a really quick decision, and I didn't want to bother you." I said, "Look, if you think you're bothering me, this is most definitely the reason why you should always." But it was just her first year. She's made a difference with some scholarships now. And so now we have this report, like she called me earlier to let me know something happened and she has to take a summer class so she could be eligible for the SUM grant they have here. and the Hope Scholarship. So she's like, I need to take one more class to be eligible for the Hope Scholarship to make up the difference and blah, blah, blah. I said, do you have the funding? She was like, yeah. I said, we'll take the summer class. I mean, no brainer there. If you can do it, then do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with the city and regional planning, like it was a great experience in the classes, and like I learned how to do stuff that I had no interest in ever knowing how to do, but it's pretty cool. Like, you learn technical stuff. So it's all about urban planning, economic development, that type of stuff, whatever. But regional planning, thinking about how, cities and communities will grow, doing like actual plans, thinking about, planned communities. It actually led to my interest in housing and public housing and stuff, which is something I worked in briefly when I lived in Chicago after law school. But with city and regional planning, I had the opportunity to work for the City of Columbus Neighborhood Development Division. And Columbus is divided up into these different areas. The City Department of Development, Neighborhood Services, each section has a Neighborhood Services liaison. And they would, help liaison between the community and Department of Development. And they had us in there to kind of just help bridge the gap. So I got to do some like community assessments, and but I didn't realize, I know so much more now than I did then. Like even then, that was like 2004, 2005, we were seeing the early effects of the foreclosure bubble, because we had so many communities like in Southwest Columbus, because you have these, the balloon payments and things like that. When I worked in the city of Columbus, there was a staffer, right, in the city of Columbus in the Department of Development I remember some of the ladies were talking about it, like how she got hit in one of those balloon payments and she didn't read the fine print. So her payments went from whatever they were to like 4 times the amount, or I don't remember. It was something huge and unbearable. And so that stuff was happening, several years before the burst finally actually hit all of us. But just working with communities, helping people be aware of the issues involved, and it was interesting, that work, and I took I took planning law because again I wanted to go to law school. I mean, I decided to go into grad school because it was a secondary interest. Grad school gave me advanced. My degree was in sociology. Coming out of college, there's not really anything you can do with a
sociology. Yeah.
Well, sociology, they had Target coming in talking to us about being loss prevention managers. That's not why I went to college for. So I was like, I have to go to grad school. I wasn't going to get my PhD in sociology because I want to be a lawyer. So even if I'm gonna get a grad degree. I'm gonna get a good degree. I'm gonna do something that's practical that I can get a job in. If law school doesn't pan out, then at least I have this degree and I can get a job. And that was my thought. Going to grad school.
Some city is going to need your services.
Yeah, somebody would meet me someplace or whatever, everywhere, and it was, I learned a lot about transportation demand planning. I mean, just tons of stuff. We took a class about doing physical planning. So actually like laying out, new divisions, subdivisions, and sewage lines.
Housing has such a big impact on education.
Housing has a big impact on education. We had classes that looked at, inequalities in housing and planning and development and things like that or whatever. And that's when, those are some of my most favorite, those are some of the most enjoyable classes. But I saw 2 documentaries in grad school. They're fundamentally, they didn't change the way I thought about things, but they reinforced my own experiences growing up, in the hood, so to speak, right?
Okay, I need the names of those.
One was called Flag Wars. One was called Flag Wars. And it was about gentrification in Columbus, and basically how you had, I think it was the east side of Columbus. You had a community in Columbus that was an older, Black, low-income community. Quite a few homeowners, though, but a lot of our communities, we don't have necessarily the funds or resources to fix up. Right, so people start moving into the community, start buying up, and it drives the taxes and drives people out. Well, the Flag War was that it became a hotbed for LGBT, primarily gay men, white men, to buy property. Either they were flipping and it was becoming an issue for the community. This is an older Black community. I mean, even though it's Columbus, a lot of people are still from the South, so it's a very different dynamic and mixture
For the
in the
Great Migration,
communities.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so the flag wars where you would start seeing the rainbow flags on houses and stuff, and then so you had this issue between the existing long term older Black community and this new influx because and this notion that it's almost like a John Lockean way of looking at things, right? Like, okay, you have things out in nature, but now because I do something to it, it's better or I own it without really looking at it. It's almost like spatial. Like gentrification is like spatial colonialism, right? Like I'm going to come in here because you don't take care of this space, and I'm going to make it better, and now I'm more worthy of it than you are. Instead of recognizing all of the issues that maybe keep people from being able to invest in surroundings around them. So that was one piece because you would think that these are actually two communities that should have been able to come together
To work, yes, to help everybody,
right, and work together to build it up. Right, and that actually at that time did not happen. The other one I saw, I think it's called Breaking Ground.
Okay.
And this is a group I actually followed on my Facebook, so I can send you the link on Facebook.
Okay.
It's the Dudley Street Initiative. Dudley Street is in Boston.
Dudley Street.
And the Dudley Street, well, I don't know if it's but Dudley Street Initiative. Dudley Street is in Boston, and it was an older documentary. And it talked about the use of and how this community leveraged its power, organized, and this started probably in the late 80s, early 90s when they started doing this because it started as simply as them organizing community watch so the kids could play safely in the park, right? Because it was overrun with drug dealers and gangbangers and stuff. They would have to take back the nights, in the park and stuff from the community, and they just had it was a pretty diverse community. Cape Verdean, Portuguese, African American, some Latino, like it's a pretty diverse community. And so this documentary watched in one of my classes, and it followed this community and how they started this branching out. So it started simple like that. And then they were looking at, there were all these vacant lands and stuff. So they got the city to use eminent domain so that they could acquire the land to start building homes for people. So they were able to leverage, and I had never thought about, that's what I'm saying, like this movie fundamentally changed the way I thought about eminent domain.
Wow.
Because eminent domain was always a negative thing to me. Always.
A negative thing, yeah.
And generally how it's always used is generally, but the fact that eminent domain can be leveraged by communities for the betterment of the community was an amazing concept. I had never thought about it like that. If you have an organized group to be able to make that claim, because when I thought about with the city of New York, for example,